Just wanted to see the names.
He's one of the biggest names in contemporary art.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Fame found him in the early 90s.
The multi-talented Mr. Douglas Coupland.
When his debut novel turned a spotlight on a generation. But his first love was his visual work.
I don't think I came alive until I went to art school. That was in 1980. I remember walking through the front doors of art school and for the very first time in my life, feeling completely at home.
From towering cities made of Lego, to obscure objects he finds dumpster diving, to art that comes alive with the click of a smartphone.
Who's that? Oh, it's Osama bin Laden.
Coupland explores the impact of technology on modern life. That's just one of his obsessions. 9/11 is another. He's also a big promoter of Canadian identity. I met up with him earlier this week at Toronto's Royal Ontario Museum to talk about his latest exhibit, Everywhere is Anywhere is Anything is Everything.
So here we are, Douglas Coupland at the Royal Ontario Museum. Are you like establishment man now?
I don't know, it's wonderful to, it does feel like I'm walking inside my own brain. It really does.
Well, let's start with one of the exhibits over here. It's about 9/11. Why did you want to make art about 9/11?
The first show I ever had opened on September 8th, 2001 in Tribeca, New York. And then 9/11 happened 3 days later. And so my entire first show, it was a massive show, was covered for half a year with 9/11 dust. And I wasn't allowed to go in and get anything. And so I probably maybe thought about that part of the world more than others.
What are these?
Well, William Gibson, the writer, he's a good friend in Vancouver, and we were discussing 9/11 once. And what we noticed is that everyone back in 2001 looks exactly the same as they do now, and that the only difference between then and now is these things, and that almost everything we look at now is mediated through the cyclops eye of the smartphone. And so in this case right here, I'm like, who's that? And then you look through, and like, oh, it's Osama bin Laden, and that's a drone doing a missile strike. And then further throughout the show, there's more of that.
You call him a boogeyman. So are you saying we should be afraid or we shouldn't be afraid?
I think we have to acknowledge that this stuff's inside of us. I mean, it's 14 years later, and it's still very difficult to deal with some of the imagery that we saw that day. I mean, also think of this, Wendy, if 9/11 happened now, and everyone in New York had cell phones. Can you imagine how many billions of hours of footage there would have been? So I think of 9/11 as the last underdocumented mega event in human history.
This is, I guess you began as a visual artist and then you became a writer. This is
sort of a half and half here. It's a project I started about 3 years ago. Is what could you say to someone, maybe 20, 15 years ago, that makes total sense here in 2015, but would just be gibberish to someone 20 years ago? And it makes you realize, wow, like how much we've changed as a society.
I appreciate I kind of miss being bored. Kids don't really say that anymore. There's always some YouTube thing to watch or do.
I mean, have you ever been walking down a street and you're not looking at a device and you're just walking and you almost feel like you're guilty of some crime?
Because I'm not on my phone?
Or doing something, like just like being unproductive.
Like dealing with other people.
Yeah.
But young people, do they even get that concept? Like we're of a generation, there's another line there, what is it? I miss my pre-internet brain.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean, but do people who were born with phones, what do you mean?
I'm actually starting to forget my pre-internet brain, which is, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
How's it different?
I'm starting to remember what it felt like to do nothing, actually. I mean, it's not like I'm super productive, but I missed those quiet spots, and I think a lot of people maybe do. And yet here we are stuck in this new situation. So maybe, younger people, they don't have to get rid of so much luggage.
So is this now, or this is when?
this is a possible near future. And I mean,
It
you
doesn't
got
look very welcoming.
well, you got the national security agents in the middle of the parking lot, and the spilled oil. These globes are kind of like world bears from the dark future.
They're covered in oil, or what is it? Yeah.
And
So
of course,
are you worried about the environment as
I'm
well?
very, very worried. I think back in 1972 or 3 in Vancouver, where I grew up, there was an oil spill on Ambleside Beach, just underneath the Lionsgate Bridge. And the teacher said, oh, it'd be great if you guys go down and help clean it up. And we got down there, and there was all these poor little cormorants covered in oil, and it really screwed us up. And so it's, I do think about it a lot, yeah.
And privacy. I mean, look at all the cameras looking at us. That's
Privacy is a strange one, isn't it?
yeah.
Now,
But you like technology. How do you avoid
well, you don't.
privacy issues with technology?
I don't know. You have to figure out your new relationship with what's public and what's not. Now, this is a project, it's called The Brain. And, I think sometimes I'm not sure if I'm a collector or if I'm a hoarder.
Yeah, I'm wondering. It's very nicely presented, hoarding.
Well, I was thinking that if you just collect things and you don't overthink it and you assemble them together and then you pull them out at the end of it, you can realize things about yourself that maybe you would never have otherwise realized.
What's this section over here? There seems to be a fair amount of Canadiana in here.
Oh.
Yeah, well, we've got the Stanfield underwear. That's Canadian, right? I remember those.
It's, I guess this is about like sex and death and the ego.
Oh, I thought it was Canada.
Well, there's a whole other section of Canada, which I began exploring back in about 2000. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s, especially thinking that Canada was going to get absorbed into the United States. And it was just this awful sensation. And then around 2000, I felt something shifting and changing. And it might have been the internet. But we hit this point where, from the States, we really diverged away from who they are and who we are.
We became more proud?
And ourselves. I mean, we've just kind of figured it out. We started a bit later than the States, so it took a bit more time. But
Well, you've been promoting that too, right?
I think it's something we need to be aware of. When I started doing it, it was very, very uncool. Like
To be Canadian?
no, to study,
Or to promote Canada?
No, just to think about what does it mean to be a citizen and a Canadian. And then I think we all realized that we had this moment that we're very much into right now. That actually, here's what we stand for, and here's what we want, and here's what we don't want.
So who are we?
I think we're very lucky to be Canadian. I think it's the great time-space genetic lottery of all time.
Are we that different?
Well, you know what it is? It's in our Constitution. In the Americans, in the States, for example, the individual always comes first. In Canada, there are situations where the group comes first, and we're also that much further north. It's a bit more work, and people have to work harder together to survive.
And we're Stanfields.
Okay, actually, here's something. Edit this in. If you paint landscapes, Americans only want to have people in it. They won't buy a landscape unless there's people inside the landscape. And Canadians, when they buy a landscape, they don't want any people in it. It has to be completely empty of human presence. And I think that's because we sort of respect the wilderness, reaches that far, much farther north.
It's a different sense of us.
I think
what
so.
us is.
Yeah.
So are you an optimist?
I think that human beings are just a little bit more good than they are bad. I think instead of worrying about a lot of things, you can just fix things.
Can we?
Yeah, I think things are fixable. Not everything. And are you not, can I ask you, are you an optimist or a pessimist?
I'm an angry optimist.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, it's mine now. I'm an angry optimist. What makes you angry?
Oh, lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you can change things?
Well, that's why I'm a journalist, but I'm not having much luck.
You're doing fine.
You came up with the whole Gen X thing.
That was 24
I
years
know.
ago now.
So then that was sort of about people being disaffected. What do you think of people, young people today? Where are they? Are they?
I think young people today are kind of remarkable. They're a lot more politically aware than I ever was at that age, or maybe we were at that age. They get news from everywhere. They're very good at making decisions, and they'll call you on any, try to give them any bull. They'll say, nope, you're trying to just get that one past me. They don't vote as much, which is strange considering that they're more political. So I don't know what that's all about.
Well, the 16-year-old I know says, who would we vote for? I don't think they look up to the people who are asking for their votes. They look up to different people these days.
Well, I mean, in a world without privacy, I mean, who on earth would want to, like the time you were throwing up in a snowbank back in grade 11, like, wham, it's out there and living Facebook.
So what's next?
Oh boy. Well, you know what I was thinking about? This year at the Academy Awards, the two films that were the only real contenders were Boyhood and Birdman. And both of them were about time. One was about growing sort of older across decades, and the other one was a continuous shot. And I think that underlying that is a real nostalgia for continuity or continuous time or biological time. And I think that more and more we're going to have to be paying attention to that. And it might be as simple as going to lake country or going to hike or something like that. But
without a cell phone?
Well, you'd think so, but what if you get lost?
Exactly.
But what if you had the best email you've ever had and it's sitting there on your phone waiting to be read? So it's human nature. Alien beings did not come down from outer space and give this stuff. We made it ourselves, and instead of being alienating, technology is humanating. And we're never going to be able to invent artificial intelligence because it only comes from us. It might be smarter or better or faster, but it's never going to be alien. And we're only going to learn new things about the human condition, for better or worse.
So you're in your 50s now. Are you afraid you'll lose the cool?
I don't know the cool thing. I just find the world endlessly fascinating. There's always something there. There's always a pattern to be found. There's beauty in the plastic lids you throw away. There's, what's that Leonard Cohen, there's flowers in the garbage. In art school, the first thing they teach you is, let's go dumpster diving.
Looks like you still are.
I love it. I don't trust anyone who won't go dumpster diving with me. And there's always a gem there somewhere.
Among the hypodermic needles, or do I sound like somebody's mother?
Wear gloves.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure to meet you, Douglas. Thank you.
Thank you.